and steal this strategy. The subjectives are just as important as the objectives. The subjective components of your application, the pieces that we can't measure, like the essays, the extracurricular activities to some extent, teacher recommendations, these are just as important as the pieces that you can measure, like your academics, like your standardized testing, like the SATs and the ACTs. I find that in my work with students and with families, because we can measure the SAT score, because we can measure our school grades, it's just easier to become fixated on that as something to optimize. And of course, we need to be doing well in those things. But it's been seen that over 80% of students who apply to somewhere like Stanford are actually passing that first numerical evaluation. So that means that 80% of applications every year are qualified on the academic standards. They have to get from 80% to 3% or 4% at these very, very competitive universities. So it can't be those measurable values that are going to be getting us in. It's the subjective components like essays, the extracurricular activities, and other pieces. Those are the ones that are going to really win or lose your application. They're going to be the things that really get you through the door. So let's talk through a few examples of where a student may have been successful with this and where a student may have been not so successful. We'll start with the latter. So I was working with a student last year who wanted to study business, was obsessed with studying at Wharton, and it was our ambition to help him achieve those dreams. And from day one in my meetings with him and his family, there was an obsession over the SAT score. How can I optimize my SAT score to get a 1600? I've read online that getting a 1600 is crucial in getting into a top 10 university. And so to that, I would respond and say, well, of course, if we can get a really high score in the SAT, that's going to be fantastic. But there are other pieces that are ultimately going to show you more than just a single digit. And so despite my trying to explain this in every session, this conversation kept on being brought back with full force, often to the complete ignoring of conversations around extracurriculars. I would try and encourage the student to build their extracurricular activities to have as much impact as possible. I was helping the student figure out what to write his essays about and how to really make himself clearer in that writing, how to really bring across his true values, which is what the admissions officers are looking for. But despite trying to give this advice in every session that we met, it always seemed to be the case that he and his family returned to trying to optimize the SAT. It's a great component of the application, but it is not the be-all and end-all. So we need to make sure that we are focusing on the other pieces. The student, unfortunately, wasn't able to get into Wharton, was able to get into some good schools, but wasn't able to achieve those dreams. And with a little bit of a redirection on his part there, probably would have had more success. On the other hand, I had a student a few years ago who got into Stanford, and my students are always surprised when I use this example in meetings with them. The student got a 1450 on the SAT. Now for Stanford, that's a good score. It's just below the 25th percentile. What does that mean in practice? It means that there are 20% of the students on Stanford's campus walking around with a score at that level or even lower. So even though that score isn't right at the top, even though that score isn't the score that maybe she was aiming for, she came into the process with a mindset of understanding the holistic nature of this admissions process. This is a holistic admissions process, and that means that they look at everything. They look at you as a full picture, not just you as an SAT score or you as an academics achiever. They want to know who you are beyond the numbers. And I believe that it is beyond the numbers that we can really have great success. This student got in early to Stanford. She's completing, I believe, her junior year there. And, if she had hyper-fixated on the things that we can measure, it might not have been the case that she had got an offer from there. So to summarize, make sure to prioritize your subjectives just as much as your objectives. Because for this particular student who was successful in getting into Stanford, it's unlikely that the result would have been so strong had she been so obsessed with getting that score up to a respectable level that you might read online. That focus on her values and communicating those was really the thing that got her in. If you like what you've heard today and you would like to hear more tips and tricks from us at Crimson Education, then please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and please click the link below for more information on Crimson Education. And I will see you next time for another installment.